Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our public meeting. It's September 29th, and we have two items on the agenda today. And the first one, we'll get into the first one right away. It's scheduled for 6. Let's do a quick roll call here because I see we're missing a couple, but let's do a roll call. This meeting is being recorded in case none of you heard that. Councillor Foster.
Present. Sound check.
Councillor Van Leeuwen. Councillor Van Leeuwen? Can't hear you, Steve. Your sound isn't working, but you sure are bright. Let's see if we can get your sound going before we go too far. Councillor McElwain.
It shows you.
Councillor Kittredge. Councillor Dunsmore.
I am here.
And Councillor McCrae.
Here.
Okay, well, we do have quorum, so we are going to start. Steve, I think I do hear you. I hear somebody talking who isn't muted right now. So just remind people, if you aren't speaking, just to please mute yourself so we don't hear a bunch of background noise. It's hard enough to do Zoom meetings without that, so appreciate that. At this point, I'll call this public meeting to order. It is now 6:01. Any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for this first meeting? Okay, seeing none. The purpose of this public meeting is to present and receive public input regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment on subject lands known as 6839 Wellington Road 16 in the former Township of West Garafraxa. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning of the subject land from A, agricultural, and EP, environmental protection, to A, agricultural exception, and EP, environmental protection. The effect of the amendment is to implement zoning regulations necessary to facilitate a farm dwelling surplus severance and restrict residential uses on the retained parcel. The zoning amendment is a condition of approval of the County of Wellington Land Division Committee application B12/21. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make a written submission to the Township of Center Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Center Wellington to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Township of Center Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk, Township of Center Wellington, 1 McDonald Square, Elora, Ontario, N0B 1S0. At this point, I'll ask the clerk to advise how notice was given.
Through you, Mayor Linton, notice was mailed to prescribed persons, agencies, and public bodies on September the 2nd. Also, a copy of the notice was placed in the Wellington Advertiser on September the 2nd. I can therefore confirm that the requirement for giving notice was completed on September the 2nd, 2021.
Thank you, Carrie. At this point, I will call on Mariana, our senior planner, to introduce this application. Welcome, Mariana.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you to members of council. This application is a condition of a land severance, and that purpose of that is for farm dwelling surplus severance, so that farmland can be consolidated. There you go. Thank you, Lisa. So Lisa has brought up the sketch here, and rather than be repetitive here, I know that the applicant, Mr. Buseman, is on the line and he is prepared to present the application. So if I could allow him to do that, and then I would be available to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mariana. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor and council and participants. As presented on the sketch there, this is an approved severance subject to conditions, one of which, of course, is rezoning to allow for a rezoning of the retained lands to not have a dwelling on it. This is we commonly call these surplus farm resident severance. So the existing farmhouse and area is being severed off separately from the rest of the property. This parcel is probably a little bit bigger than normal, mainly because of the bush and the wetlands and so forth that are not wetlands, a little bit of wetlands, but that are incorporated in the proposed severance. It's a pretty standard severance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Mr. Boozman. Before we go any further, Councillor Van Leeuwen, I know that you kind of left when we were doing the declaration. Do you have any pecuniary interest with this matter? Was that a no? Can you not? Because I can't hear you again. No, that's a really big no. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Van Leeuwen. At this point, we have no delegations registered for this item. Is there anybody on our call today that would like to speak to this application? Okay, at this point, I'll ask for questions of council on this application to either Mr. Boozman or to our staff. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. My question would be for Mariana. Mariana, I understand the concept, excuse me, of surplus farm dwelling severance, but what I'd like to know, Mariana, have you ever seen a case? I think my first question would be, how long has the province been allowing this as a policy matter? And secondly, have you ever seen a case where someone purchased a formerly severed parcel with a restriction on it and asked to return it back to ag without exception so that a dwelling could then be built upon it? Have you ever seen such a case, Mariana? And how long have these commonly been allowed?
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Linton. I don't know the exact date of when the province started the policy or when it was instituted, at least for the last decade, and probably significantly longer. So it's been in place for quite some time. That's the first part of the question. The second part is, has anybody ever reinstituted or requested that they be allowed to build a dwelling on those retained farmlands? No, because it wouldn't be permitted. So it has not, to my knowledge, ever occurred that I'm aware of.
Any other questions, comments from council? Okay, at this point, I thank everyone for attending and I advise that council will be considering a bylaw at a future council meeting. And at this point, I declare this public meeting closed. Thank you very much. Carrie, can we go right into the second one or do we have to wait?
No, I believe they were both advertised for 6 o'clock. So let me check. Yes, you may go right ahead.
Okay, perfect. So our second item today, I'll call this second meeting to order and ask on this topic if we have any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for meeting number 2 on our public meeting agenda today. Okay, seeing no's all around. The purpose of this public meeting is to present and receive public input regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment on subject lands known as 7716 Wellington Road 22 in the former Township of Nichol. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning of the subject land from A agricultural to A agricultural exception. The effect of the amendment is to implement zoning regulations necessary to facilitate a farm dwelling surplus severance by restricting residential uses on the retained parcel and permitting a reduced lot frontage on the severed parcel. The zoning amendment is a condition of approval of the County of Wellington Land Division Committee application B7-21. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Center Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Center Wellington to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Center Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk, Township of Center Wellington, 1 McDonald Square, Elora, Ontario, N0B1S0. At this point, I'll ask our clerk how notice was given.
Through you, Mayor Linton, notice was mailed to prescribed persons, agencies, and public bodies on September the 2nd. A copy of the notice was also advertised in the Wellington Advertiser on September the 2nd. I can therefore confirm the requirement for giving notice was completed on September the 2nd, 2001.
Thanks, Carrie. And at this point, I'll call on Mariana, our senior planner, to introduce this application.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you. This application, similar to the previous one, is again a farm dwelling surplus severance application rezoning. So it was a condition of the severance and that the retained parcel be rezoned to not allow a dwelling. And this one's slightly different in that it has it's recognizing a reduced lot frontage of 12 meters instead of the required 30 meters. And that is to allow for the driveway to access the residential portion at the back. So it's like a flag-shaped lot. And the purpose of that reduced frontage is just to allow some of that additional farmland to be retained with the farm parcel. So those are the two matters that need to be addressed through this rezoning. And I believe that Mr. Buseman might have something else to add here. So perhaps if I could turn that over to him to explain the balance of the application.
Thanks, Mariana. Over to you, Mr. Buseman.
Pretty hard to add much more to that one because again, it's fairly straightforward. Surplus farm resident severance. And as mentioned, the unique part of this one is that we're asking for a reduced frontage for the stick of the flag shape, if you will, as it hits Wellington Road 22. In the back are, the area again incorporates the existing buildings and features in the area. Again, it's a pretty straightforward application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Buseman. Is there no delegates are registered for this, or is there anyone on our call today that would like to speak to this application?
This property,
Sorry, before you go, can you just identify yourself, state your name and your address, please, for us? Because we have you as Sandra, and I'm not sure that that's your name.
I'm her husband, Paul Howlett, 6009 Highway 6. And I got this paperwork, and I don't know what agricultural exception is. And I understand that was it Andrew that bought the property?
Sorry, the first question is for Mariana. I think she can explain to you what agricultural exception is. And as far as who bought the property, I'm not sure. I don't see that in the application here. So Mariana, maybe you can handle the first question first.
Sure, thank you. Through you, Mayor Linton, thank you for the question. So a farm dwelling surplus severance application is really to sever the farmhouse off from farmland so that a farmer can consolidate the farmland and not have to deal with basically the house, maintain the house. So the house could get sold off as a separate parcel. But because of the provincial policies in place right now around agricultural lands, and severances, a new dwelling is not permitted on the farmland. So it's really to try to prevent encroachment of residential uses in the agricultural area. So all that's happening here is basically a lot line is being created so that that farmhouse can be sold off, is separate from the farmland, and then the farmland can be consolidated by the farmer to continue to be farmed. So what's happening here is just that the zoning is changing that farm parcel to not allow a dwelling. So that's what that exception is. The exception to the zoning would not allow a dwelling now.
Okay. And this went on, I'm going to say 3 months ago or 4 months ago, and there was paperwork that came out to say that what they were going to do. Why wasn't it done then?
Can I explain that then?
Yeah, you can explain the process. This is part of the
Okay.
process to do this, exactly what you're talking about. Go ahead,
Yes.
Mariana.
Through you, Mayor Linton. So there's two parts of a severance application process. The first
I
part would have been the severance, and that goes through the county, through the Land Division Committee. So the public would be notified, everybody within 60 meters of that property. And so there's that first part of that process that would be conditionally approved. And one of the conditions that staff would have recommended, our planning staff here, is that a rezoning be applied for so that they have zoning approval to identify any deficiencies, to rectify any deficiencies, and to institute this policy of not allowing a dwelling unit. So that's the second part of this process, which is now the rezoning. And that's what we're here to do tonight, is the public meeting that's required as a statutory meeting for the rezoning only.
see. I didn't know that. And how much property will go with the house when it's when it's sold?
Through
Rough.
you, Mayor Linton, if you'd like me to answer that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's 1.5 acres, sorry, 1.5 hectares, so 3.7 acres is a flag-shaped lot that encompasses the driveway all the way up to the house, and then the house and the drive shed.
Oh,
So
there's the dry
that's
shed
the
still there.
severed parcel.
And the barn was taken down?
The barn will be removed, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. I wasn't sure what exception was and all the rest of it. So I'm glad I joined in. Thanks for your help.
Thanks, Mariana. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to explain what the county's role is versus what the township's role is, because it seems very similar sometimes. Thanks for those explanations. Anyone else who is here that wants to ask any questions or have any comments related to this? Okay. At this point, I'll ask if there's any questions, comments from members of council. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. My question would be for Mr. Buisman. Jeff, does, in this case, is the applicant own an adjacent farm? Is there, maybe you can answer that first of all.
It's and so the one question was this Andrew, and I'll say this is Andrew Benendijk. And so he owns a number of farms in the area. I can't remember the exact list of farms, but it's not, I don't believe it's right next door, but he's in the area. I'd have to do a little digging to find exactly which farms he has.
Okay, second question, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. My second question, Jeff, would be is this applicant a farm producer? Is this severance largely with respect to nutrient management, for example, or maybe you can flesh that out for me?
He's he's a large farmer in the area. What exactly he's going to be doing, whether it is part of his nutrient management plan, he didn't share that with me. Very typical of farmers of this style. They gather larger farms and they purchase them, and they might buy 100 acres here, 100 acres there, and they just don't want to be landlords of these of the homes. So that's why they are severing off these homes. And also the capital investment for that they make is in the land, and not so much then they don't need the capital investment in that house as well. I could flip through my list I could do a little more digging on what properties he owns, but he's definitely a large farmer in the area. I think it also goes by the name of Polsto is the name of the farm.
Okay, that's good. So at this point, I will thank everyone for attending and advise that council will be considering a bylaw at a future council meeting. And I declare this meeting closed as well. And our meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for the meeting, and have a great rest of the evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.